Now, there is a case where the alignment can be modified in a way that its element ID is changed. Remember, rules and snaps with an ORD create a link to the element ID, not the element's name. You can put an alignment back, it can have the same name, it can be in the same place, but if it has a different element ID, then OpenRoads will not recognize it, because element IDs, every element that gets created is a new element ID. So some ways that you can create elements with a new element ID. For example, let's say you drop the alignment and then you recomplex it. Well, that new complex alignment would be assigned a new element ID. Let's say you delete the alignment and then re-import it from an ALG or a GPK. Well, when you do that, doesn't matter that you brought it in with the same name, it's going to get a new element ID. Or let's say that you imported or recreated in a new model or a new file, and you want to point to that file. Again, that's fine, but there's a new element ID. So whenever this happens, whenever your geometry changes in a way that the element ID is changed, you can use there's a key in called corridor reattach. And what it does, it reestablishes the connection between the alignment and the corridor. In other words, you have to do it to tell the corridor to heal itself. So let's take a look at this. Here I am. I'm back in my corridor file. And once again, my geometry file is missing. Okay, we don't know. Somebody has renamed it, right? So it's missing. Now, once again, let me point out the corridor is still viable because it's got a backup copy of the geometry in here that it's able to work off of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the geometry file. Okay, so before I reattach it or anything, I'm going to go in and I'm going to delete it. Okay, so somebody just says, you know what, they had brought this in from an ALG, and instead of just re-importing as they should have done, they actually delete it first. Well, when they do that, I'm going to re-import the geometry, so I'm going to specify the ALG, okay, and I'll just go down to ramp C. Well, when it recreates ramp C here, it's going to assign it a new element ID. Now, still got the same alignment name, ramp C. I can come in here and set the feature definition so it looks exactly the same, but the difference is, because I deleted it and re-imported it, it was assigned a new element ID. So the corridor will not recognize this. So let's go ahead and make a change to it. Okay, so we can see that the corridor is not recognizing it. So let's come back into the, let's go over to our test.dgn. Let's rename the ramp C file to the proper name. Okay, so now that we know the ramp C is going to be found. All right, and then let's go back to our corridor file. All right, so we bring in our corridor file. Now you can see the ramp C geometry is now found. You can kind of see the orange line moving outside the corridor there. Now, if I process the corridor now, it will process. Okay, so let's do something. Let's change it from conceptual to final. So the corridor is going to process, but it's processing off the copy of the original geometry. See, it's not moving. So I have to heal it. I have to tell it, no, I want you to use that new alignment. All right. So to do that, I'm going to go to our key-in command. So we'll just come up here and open the key-in, and I'm going to type in the command corridor reattach. Okay. When I do that, it's going to prompt me to locate the corridor. So I'm going to identify the corridor that I want to heal. It says locate the baseline, and I'm just going to reset to use the active profile for that baseline. When I do that, the corridor will reprocess it and it'll heal itself to that new alignment. So if you run into this situation where you've deleted or somehow or another recomplexed your original geometry and it gets detached, remember your corridor will stay viable, but you'll need to heal it to the new one by using the corridor reattach command. The final thing I want to talk about with reference files is in regard to rules. Now, keep in mind, and I'm sure we all know this by now, that in OpenRoads, reference file dependencies are created in certain situations. For example, when you reference in a terrain and you make it active, it creates a dependency from your active file to the terrain. When you build a corridor on reference geometry, there's a dependency between the corridor and that reference geometry file. Another action that creates a reference file dependency is snapping to elements in a reference file. They also create a dependency. So let's take a look here at what I'm talking about. So I'm going to open up my reference files here. I'm in my corridor file, and I've got a few reference files here. Notice my terrain. If I go to try to detach this, okay, and say okay, go ahead and detach it, I'm going to get this warning. Okay, this is OpenRoads kind of steps in and says, wait a second, there's a dependency to that terrain. In other words, you've set it active. You really don't want to break. Are you sure you want to do this? And in fact, 99 times out of 100, you probably don't. So I'm going to say no. So this is just a safety to say don't do that, right? Geometry, same way. If I try to detach my geometry, it says, hey, you've got dependencies between this file and that geometry file. Are you sure you want to do this? And again, the vast majority of times you probably do not want to do that. So this again is a safety measure to let you know there's a rule or relationship or dependency between your current file and your reference file. Now, if there is no dependency, you won't get this. So I'm going to do something here. Let's attach ramp B. Okay, just for the heck of it, I'm going to attach ramp B, and it brings ramp B in right there. Now, at this point, there's no dependency, so if I decide I want to detach it, it's just a normal reference file, and it doesn't cause me any issues, no problems, no warnings, no nothing. All right, but if I was to snap to something in that file, it would create a dependency. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back in again. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to move the beginning station template drop, and I'm going to snap to the end of that alignment. Okay, in other words, I'm going to use an element in the reference file as a snap locator. All right, so the corridor will reprocess, and if you look there, you'll see the little glyph there that shows me that there's a snap setting there, okay, to that element. All right, now what happens here is if now I've created a dependency to ramp B, right? That there's a rule or a dependency, a relationship to that file now. So if I was to go out here now and go back to my reference files and say, well, let's detach ramp B, then you're going to receive the warning that you got earlier because you've created a dependency to that reference file. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Of course, that is working exactly the way it should, but it's just something that we need to all be aware of. So one thing you could do is you may want to turn the snaps off to reference files by default, and then let users turn them on as they're needed. So a couple things we've added in OpenRoads Designer Update 2. We added an option to the feature definition toggle bar to help prevent unwanted snap rules. So you'll see there's a new thing called persist snaps. So if that's on and you do a snap, you're saying I want to create a rule. If that's off, you're saying I don't want a rule. But as I mentioned, that's one way that we help you to determine when you want to create rules and when you don't. And again, I mentioned you may want to even consider disabling the use reference snap lock in reference files to just help prevent unwanted snaps. Again, our users have been working that way for a long time. We just snap, snap, snap. We don't think about creating rules. And so these are a couple things here that could help you in that area. Well, that ends our presentation today. I hope everybody found that informative, and that concludes it. And thank you, and have a great day.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more such series, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you next time.